Hello and welcome to class number 25 of the UPSC Mains Answer Writing Initiative, where we are trying to make you a master of UPSC answer writing, trying to remove all the fears that you have in your mind to face these questions. Since the last 25 days, every single day at 7 p.m. we have this class where we try and answer a previous year question, see how and what to write in these kind of questions, and then give you a homework as well. I'm also sharing the PDF of all these lectures on our Telegram channel. You can join the Telegram channel by using the link in the description of this particular video. I'm also giving you a link of the entire playlist of this series. In case you missed out on any of the earlier classes, please go ahead and watch that. Before we begin, in case you are new to this particular series, I want to remind you, in the very first class of this series, that is class number 1, we discuss about how to structure your answer. When I say how to structure, means how and what to write in the introduction, how and what to write in the main body, and how to deal with conclusion, when to write the way forward, when not to write it, so on and so forth. All these things were discussed in class number 1 of this series. So in case you have not watched that, due to any reason, go to description of this video, click on the link of the playlist, go to class number 1, and there you will be able to see that. So do make sure that you are clear with that, and then you can come back. Now let's see what is today's question that we will be discussing. It's a question from GS1 asked in 2023 by UPSC. It's a question from Indian society. The question is, does urbanization lead to more segregation or marginalization of the poor in Indian metropolises? What exactly is the meaning of this question? Basically what it means to say is, when people move to urban areas from rural areas, mainly for economic opportunities, when poor people come in, it leads to segregation. Means we see most of the poor people who are migratory laborers, they live in a specific area. Rather than intermingling with other people, the locals in the new city or the locals in the urban areas, they mainly actually go to live in slums. They form their own colonies where you will only find those laborers. So that is called segregation. Also known as ghettoization. Ghetto means when in a specific area only one group or one class of people live. Marginalization means when they are not getting into the mainstream, when they are not being accepted into the mainstream. So the question is, does urbanization, means when poor people from rural area move to urban area, does it lead to more of these kind of problems when they move to these bigger cities? Now, in these kind of questions, obviously you have to first decide yes or no, because the question is, does it happen? Now, no cannot be your answer, obviously, because if you say no, it doesn't happen, then your answer is over in one single word. So the answer obviously is yes, it does happen. Now, what do you have to write here? Because they are not asking you anything. They just ask you, does it happen or not? You can say yes, it happens. But apart from that, what do you write? So in these kind of questions, when UPSC is not directly asking you something, they're just giving a statement. Here you have to elaborate yourself. So for example, you have to write the reasons why it happens. Means what are the reasons behind it? Why is it that marginalization happens? How it happens? What are the reasons behind it? How exactly does it take place? And the ways to improve the situation. What, why, how, these are the few things that you would have to write in these kind of questions, depending upon whatever the statement is. But when the question is just a statement and nothing more, nothing less, you have to elaborate yourself. You have to think whether I should write why, would it suit the answer? I should write how, should it suit the answer? So depending upon that, you have to take a choice. So in these kind of questions here, for example, you have to write why it happens and how it happens, basically. In what ways and what are the reasons behind it. And then in the end, we'll give some suggestions of how does it happen. Also, introduction in these kind of questions is slightly tricky because you don't have a data as such. There is no data that can tell you about segregation, marginalization. The only data point that you might write in the introduction is if you have any data about rural to urban migration. If you have any such data available with you, how many people in the past few years have migrated from rural to urban areas, something like that, that can be a good data point to write in the intro. but mostly people will not remember that. Most probably you will not have that data in your mind, so you will have to start with something very generic, something like a definition of segregation or the need for urbanization, something like that. That urbanization is the need of the hour. With more and more economic opportunities being concentrated in the cities, we see a large population moving gradually from rural areas to the urban areas, thus giving rise to problems such as segregation, marginalization of the poor people. Something like this can be the introduction. If you have a data point, if you have some facts, great. If you don't, you have to make do with the definition. So here we have written definition of segregation, and also we have written how a couple of points about how segregation is a result of migration of poor, how they move into the cities, how they actually are not able to afford to live in certain communities, and it leads to urban poor facing a lot of issues. Something like this can be an introduction. It's slightly long here. Ideally, it should be 2 lines maximum. So I would advise you to write a shorter intro. 2 lines maximum should be good enough. Now to the main bodies. The first thing that we are writing here is what are the reasons behind it. That is why. Why does it happen? So first, economic factors. See, the reason why people live in slums is not because they want to. People live in slums because they can't afford to live in a better place, as simple as that. With high rents in bigger cities, you can't afford to pay such a high rent. So you try to find a place wherein other laborers are staying, wherein other people are staying where they can't afford a lot of rent. So there is an economic challenge, there is challenges in livelihood. You don't have enough money, you don't have enough jobs, and that is how it works. Most of them work in informal sector. Because of this informal sector, again, they don't have enough opportunities and they are forced to take up any kind of living, and they try and mostly live either in the factory itself, or workers or laborers live nearby the factory area. Urban poverty, inequality again is a big reason. Urban poverty is a big fact in India. India's urban population is estimated to be about 67.5 crore by 2035. But urban areas are not being able to sustain as much population. Then there are social factors. As I said, ghettoization. People of a specific religion usually want to stay near each other. You will all have areas in your city where you will see people from one specific religion prefer to stay with each other, and that becomes a ghetto community. There are various reasons for that. Maybe a sense of belongingness, maybe a sense of security, maybe a sense of community, but that is again a reason. There are residential segregations as well. As I told you, when you go and rent a house in bigger cities, there are many restrictions. Even if you can afford it, you might not get a home. You would be forced to live in slum areas. Then there are political factors as well. A lot of times the political parties, the governments in power also want segregation of people, because that is a vote bank for them. They can address that particular population in a specific area. All these are reasons, all these are factors because of which this segregation and marginalization happens. What are the other reasons? Reasons include how our urbanization has happened. We have unplanned cities. None of our big cities were built to handle such a huge population pressure. Cities such as Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, none of them are able to handle the kind of pressure that population is imposing on them. There are overcrowded national spaces and there are lack of basic amenities. Most of the slums where you go to will not have any proper water supply, no proper sanitation facilities, no electricity facilities. The quality of living is very bad. It's a hub of diseases. All that is leading to marginalization of the poor at a very, very large scale. Steps to be taken. This is where you will have to write some suggestions. Suggestion is easy in the sense that if you know the problem, just write opposite to it, it becomes a suggestion. So for example, have planned urban spaces, have more equitable workplace conditions rather than informal workers, try to convert them into formal economy, try to make sure that they get sustainable income on time, develop their skills, make the urban government like municipalities much more accountable, much more responsible. These are some suggestions that you can write here. Again, the more facts and the more examples that you write, the better your answer will be. but it's not possible for you to remember a lot of examples in the examination. So don't pressurize yourself. Even if you remember 1 or 2 examples, good enough, you should write that. And then you will conclude how these suggestions that you suggested have to be implemented, because India is in a rapid state of urbanization. Increasingly, more and more people are shifting to cities because they have higher aspirations, and it is the government's responsibility to meet them. Something like this can be the conclusion in this answer. Tricky question. Usually Indian society questions are tricky because you have to think a lot of points and then write, rather than just remembering and writing. Now I have a question for you again from Indian society, so it will make you think. I would highly advise you to try and write from your own mind rather than copy pasting it from somewhere. Try and write from your own mind so that you can learn. Try and understand this question. Why is caste identity in India both fluid and static? Think about it. What can be the answer? If you want, I can check it. You can send a PDF copy here and I'll be happy to give you a feedback. Thank you so much for watching. Do hit the subscribe button. Till then, bye-bye. Jai Hind.